The icy wind tore through the desolate streets, carrying with it the bitter chill of winter. Snowflakes drifted down slowly, covering the small town in a cold, white silence. In the dark corner of a deserted alley, a young German shepherd lay curled up tightly, his frail body shivering violently. His thick fur, once sleek and radiant, was now tangled and caked with ice. His ribs protruded under his thin coat, and his dull eyes stared ahead, reflecting nothing but despair. Leo hadn't always known this cold, unforgiving world. Not long ago, he had been a joyful companion, chasing toys across soft carpets and curling up beside his family. But that warmth had vanished. His family had moved away, leaving him behind without a second glance. At first, Leo had waited by the door, his tail wagging eagerly with each passing car. Days turned into weeks, and the hunger gnawed at him. The cold crept deeper into his bones. He soon learned that no one was coming back. The streets were cruel. People hurried past, clutching their coats tighter, refusing to meet his pleading eyes. Some muttered about stray dogs. Others shooed him away in annoyance. Leo wandered endlessly, scavenging for scraps, but the cold sapped his strength, and exhaustion pulled him into the shadows of the alley where he now lay. Yet, deep within him, a tiny ember of hope refused to go out. That ember was the only thing that kept him going. He would curl up tighter, trying to shield himself from the biting wind, holding on to the faint memory of a soft touch and a warm home. On that bitter night, when the wind howled like wolves, Emma appeared. A retired schoolteacher, Emma was known for her gentle smile and her kindness toward every creature she met. Taking her usual evening walk, she pulled her scarf tighter around her neck as the cold bit at her skin. Then, a faint whimper reached her ears. She paused, turning toward the sound. Her eyes searched the shadows until they fell upon the trembling figure huddled in the snow. Her breath caught. "Oh, sweetheart." Emma's voice softened, barely audible over the wind. She slowly knelt, careful not to frighten him. Leo didn't move. His body was too weak, but his tired, glassy eyes met hers for a fleeting second. That moment was enough. Emma saw not just a stray, but a soul on the brink, clinging to life. Emma's heart broke at the sight. Without hesitation, she gently unwrapped the woolen scarf from around her neck and draped it over his thin body. The warmth of the scarf stirred something in Leo. A flicker of life. His eyes blinked slowly, almost in disbelief that someone had finally seen him. Emma knew she couldn't leave him. Carefully, she reached out and lifted him into her arms. He was shockingly light, his body limp against her chest. His shallow breaths were barely there. "You're safe now," she whispered, holding him close. "I've got you." With every cautious step through the snow, Emma cradled Leo closer, her warmth shielding him from the icy wind. The world had turned its back on him, but tonight, one kind soul refused to do the same. Emma's footsteps crunched against the icy ground as she hurried home. Leo's fragile body nestled against her chest. The warmth of her arms shielded him from the biting wind. As she crossed the threshold of her cozy home, the stark contrast between the brutal cold and the gentle warmth enveloped them both. Emma carefully laid Leo onto a soft plush blanket near the crackling fireplace. His breathing was shallow, but he was alive. Emma moved quickly, boiling water to make a warm broth. She poured it into a small dish and slowly brought it to Leo's muzzle. At first, he didn't react, too weak to comprehend. But Emma dipped her fingers into the broth and gently touched his nose. Leo's tongue flicked out instinctively, tasting the warmth. It was a small, fragile sign of life, but it filled Emma with hope. Realizing the severity of his condition, Emma reached for the phone with trembling hands and called the local veterinary clinic. She pleaded for help, her voice breaking with urgency. Dr. Reynolds, a compassionate vet, agreed to open the clinic after hours. Without wasting a moment, Emma wrapped Leo in thick blankets and drove cautiously through the snow-covered streets. At the clinic, Dr. Reynolds examined Leo with a furrowed brow. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, and dangerously low body temperature. But the faint, steady rhythm of Leo's heartbeat was enough for the vet to act. Intravenous fluids were administered, and heated pads surrounded his fragile body. Emma watched anxiously, whispering softly to him. "He's a fighter," Dr. Reynolds murmured. "But he's not out of the woods yet." Emma refused to leave. She sat beside Leo, gently stroking his tangled fur. She spoke to him about the safety of her home, the soft bed waiting for him, and the peaceful mornings they would share. Her words filled the sterile room with warmth. Hours passed. Leo remained weak but stable. Each faint breath was a small victory. Emma promised herself she would see this through, every moment, every struggle. Leo's body slowly responded to the warmth and care surrounding him. Days turned into weeks, and the once frail, lifeless dog began to show glimmers of strength. Emma visited him every morning and evening at the clinic, her gentle voice becoming a familiar comfort to Leo. She would sit beside him, reading softly from old books or simply talking to him about her day. Over time, Leo began to recognize her scent, her presence, and her voice. One quiet afternoon, Emma called his name as she softly opened the door to his recovery room. For the first time, Leo's ears flickered at the sound. Emma gasped, tears welling up in her eyes. She inched closer, extending her hand, and to her surprise, Leo slowly lifted his head. It was a small movement, but it was everything. Encouraged by his response, Emma brought soft blankets and one of her old sweaters to leave with him. Leo sniffed the familiar scent, curling around it in his sleep. The clinic staff noticed the difference, too. His appetite, once non-existent, slowly returned. He began eating small meals and his eyes started to lose their glassy emptiness. But Leo's recovery was far from linear. Some days were filled with progress, a wag of the tail, a curious glance. Other days, he would retreat, overwhelmed by the world. Sudden noises still sent him into hiding, his fragile trust teetering on the edge. Emma knew patience was key. Weeks later, the day finally came when Dr. Reynolds carefully said, "He's strong enough to go home, but he'll need time." Emma's heart soared. She gently wrapped Leo in a warm blanket and carried him to the car. The drive home felt different this time, not rushed with fear, but filled with hope. Leo rested quietly, sensing the change. At home, Emma had prepared a cozy corner with soft bedding, toys, and gentle lighting. She placed Leo down, allowing him to explore on his own. Leo sniffed cautiously, circling his new space. He paused near the fireplace where the warm glow mirrored the comfort of Emma's care. That evening, Emma sat quietly nearby, reading a book. Slowly, Leo stood up and, with tentative steps, crossed the room. He curled up by her feet, resting his head gently on her slipper. Emma smiled, stroking his fur. It was his first silent promise. He was beginning to trust again. Leo's first days at home were filled with quiet uncertainty. The comfort of a warm house and soft bedding couldn't erase the shadows of his past. Every creak of the floor, every distant sound of a car door slamming, sent him scrambling under furniture. Emma watched, heartbroken, as Leo's progress at the clinic seemed to dissolve in the unfamiliarity of his new environment. Emma knew that healing wasn't a straight path. She adjusted the house to be more welcoming. placing blankets in quiet corners and keeping doors open so Leo wouldn't feel trapped. She moved slowly, speaking in soft tones, giving Leo the space to adjust at his own pace. Yet it was clear that Leo's fear ran deep. Determined to help him, Emma reached out to Dr. Reynolds for advice. He recommended a canine behaviorist, someone who specialized in trauma recovery for rescue dogs. Emma didn't hesitate. Soon after, they began a gentle training program designed to rebuild Leo's trust in the world. Small steps were the goal, starting with short walks around the yard and gradually introducing new sounds and spaces. But progress was slow. On one rainy afternoon, a loud clap of thunder shook the house. Leo bolted, knocking over a chair in his panic and wedging himself behind the couch. Emma sat on the floor, speaking softly, extending her hand, but Leo wouldn't come out for hours. It was a painful reminder that recovery was fragile. Emma stayed patient. She introduced calming routines, soft classical music during storms, lavender diffusers to soothe anxiety, and predictable daily rituals. She celebrated every small victory, when Leo cautiously approached his food bowl without hesitation, or when he peeked into a new room for the first time. One morning, Emma found Leo standing by the front door, staring curiously at the outside world. His tail gave a hesitant wag. Encouraged, Emma clipped on his leash and slowly opened the door. They stepped into the fresh morning air together. Leo tensed at the sounds of distant traffic, but Emma knelt beside him, offering calm reassurance. Step by step, they walked down the path, Leo staying close but walking forward. Emma began incorporating short walks into their daily routine, each outing lasting only a few minutes. Leo sniffed cautiously at leaves and watched birds flutter by. Slowly, his steps grew more confident. The outside world didn't seem so terrifying anymore. At home, Leo started following Emma from room to room. He would sit at her feet while she read or watched curiously as she cooked in the kitchen. He even began to play with the soft toys she had laid out for him, nudging them hesitantly at first, then pouncing on them with quiet delight. One evening, as rain pattered against the windows, Emma sat by the fireplace, knitting. Leo slowly approached and laid his head on her lap. Emma froze, feeling the weight of his trust. She stroked his fur gently, her heart swelling with hope. It was the clearest sign yet. Leo was finally beginning to understand that he was safe, that this was his home. Spring arrived, washing away the last traces of a harsh winter. The once frozen ground softened, and tiny green shoots pushed through the soil, signaling new beginnings. For Leo, the transformation of the world mirrored his own. His once brittle frame had grown strong, and his fur now shimmered under the sunlight. His eyes, once dark with fear, now gleamed with curiosity and warmth. Emma noticed every subtle change. The way Leo would greet her at the door with cautious but steady steps, the soft wag of his tail when she spoke his name. These small gestures spoke volumes. Leo was finally starting to believe he belonged. One bright afternoon, Emma decided it was time for Leo to experience more than just the quiet corners of their home. She clipped on his leash and led him to the park. The gentle rustle of leaves and distant laughter of children filled the air. Emma knelt beside Leo, whispering, "Are you ready, my brave boy?" Leo hesitated, his body tense. But then, as if drawing strength from Emma's calm presence, he took a step forward. Emma unhooked the leash. Slowly, Leo walked ahead, sniffing the fresh grass, the soft wind ruffling his fur. Step by step, his pace quickened, and before long he was trotting freely. His tail wagged, not cautiously but with pure joy. In the distance, a young girl rolled a ball toward Leo. He paused, studying it, then Cautiously, he nudged it back. The girl giggled, clapping in delight. Emma watched, her heart swelling. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. Leo engaging with the world, no longer held captive by fear. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the park, Emma called to Leo. Without hesitation, he bounded back to her, resting his head on her knee. She stroked his fur, whispering, "You're safe now. You're home." That night, back at home, Leo curled beside Emma on the couch. The soft crackle of the fireplace filled the room. Emma gently rested her hand on his back, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. They had both fought hard for this moment, and they had won. If Leo's journey touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Let's spread compassion and kindness to every corner of the world. Leo had not only survived, he had discovered the meaning of trust, safety, and unconditional love. And in doing so, he had filled Emma's life with a joy she hadn't known was missing.